Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Aisha Bashiruddin, an educationist, writer, and researcher. Today I'm going to present the fourth video of the video presentation series based on my research on Muslim women in America. In the last video, I presented the theoretical framework, research design, participants, and analysis of the data. Today I'm going to focus on theme 1, which emerged from the data, and this particularly focuses on the baby boomers. So stick around. To watch the upcoming presentation videos based on my research on Muslim women in America, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon. There are two groups of the baby boomers. One group was born in Muslim countries where the predominant religion was Islam. The other group belonged to the countries in which Islam was a minority religion. In both the cases, one dominant influence on the early identity construction was the family engagement. The family played a very pertinent and conscious role in forming their identity. According to many participants, their families, which included not only their parents, but also the other members of the family, instilled in them the Islamic values and practices. Another strong influence on early identity construction was to follow their parents and families who provided them with a good role model. They all indicate that childhood upbringing have had a lasting influence on all the women's self-concept. The women also pointed out that their parents and other family members greatly influenced their thinking about being a Muslim. Two themes emerged from the data. One is parental formation of religious identity, and second is following the role models. Almost all the narratives of the baby boomers provide evidence that the parents were fundamentally influential in how they constructed their religious identity. My own lived experience and that of almost all the narratives by the baby boomers provide evidence that the parents were fundamentally influential in how they constructed a religious identity. My own experience and others from Pakistan, for example, Sultana and Naima, indicate that the environment of the home was very religious. In my reflective journal, I wrote, "At home, everything was according to the Islamic practices. There was no other way. No question of even thinking about other ways of living." Naima from Pakistan said, and I quote, "The parents played a role in educating them about Islam," unquote. According to Hadia from Syria, Islam was all love. Her father would not scare them, but say that if they obeyed Allah, Allah would love them. Rana, who is from Saudi Arabia, claims that she was born in a staunch Muslim family who were practicing Muslims. According to her, Islam was the guiding force of the family. Everything was done according to it. Islam was also considered as the best religion, a religion that joined people together. Nalo from Nigeria described how her parents made efforts to ensure that they practiced Islam. She said that her family were practicing Muslims and that they were all taught about the teachings of Islam at home by her parents. Amira, who is from Guyana, basically grew up to form her identity as a Muslim at a very early age. Her parents started to teach her words such as Allah. They kept on telling her how Allah will reward her. She saw her parents, grandparents, and other people around her praying, and as 2 year old, she would stand with her mom and act as if she was praying. My early years experiences resonate with Kamila from Palestine, who grew up in a family where they were taught about the basic principles of Islam, and this included their caring for others, such as finding about the neighbors and others around them and make sure that they were all fine. At home, they were made responsible by their parents to follow the religion, such as reading the Quran, praying 5 times a day, not harming anyone. Both Aisha and Fatma stated that their parents had set up a routine for them. For example, Aisha recalled that they had a ritual at home, and I quote, "We had a ritual at home every Friday. After everybody had showered and had lunch and prayed, her father would recite and explain the verses of Quran and tell them stories from the Quran about Jesus, Moses, and others." Hadia from Syria also described that her parents had set up a routine for them. At an incredibly young age, she started imitating her parents by praying with them 5 times a day, remembering names of Allah, and making dua. This was the ritual of the family. She said, and I quote, "Instead of fairy tales, my parents would tell us short stories from the Quran and taught us what makes Allah happy." Unquote. Abba from Africa described that she comes from a religious family. Her mother and father were both very keen to educate their children about Islam and about the values that they carry. Her parents taught her and her siblings Quran at home. Many of the narratives show that the head of the family, that is, father, took a lead role in teaching them from the Quran. For example, Abba from Africa said, and I quote, "My father in the evenings would teach us all Quran, and my mother would listen to us and revise it with us. We would pray together when everybody was at home." Unquote. Kanika, who is from Africa, also recalled that they would gather in the evenings and, I quote, "My dad would discuss with us the teachings of Islam. He would read them himself and then explained it to us. He also discussed the 99 attributes or names of Allah." Unquote. Fari from Guyana said that her parents made every effort to keep her close to her religion and its practices. They would pray together in the house whenever possible. They went to the nearby mosque to pray and to get together with other fellow Muslims. Often her father would have sessions at home with all her siblings and he would narrate stories from the Quran and told them a hadith related to the beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, of Islam. Fadil from Cuba related that when her father came to know anything about Islam and the practices of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he would tell all of his children. They all tried to practice in their daily life. She recollects her evenings in which her father would teach all of them the Quran in Spanish. He had an old Quran in Spanish, a copy that he guarded very well because in those days it was hard to find the copies of the Quran. His uncle's children and their family friends' children would also join the class. Sultana from Pakistan recollects that her father would gather all of them, that is, her siblings, and tell them stories from Islamic histories about the Islamic wars. He would also tell them about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his life. He would also tell them about the spread of Islam. They would all pray together mostly at Maghrib and Isha times. The Hima from Guyana said that her parents strictly followed the practices of Islam and were very cautious of eating halal food. Following the role models. Another aspect of family influence on the construction of early years identity was the practice of their parents and other family members. In my experience as a growing young woman, I was taught the etiquettes provided by Islam, such as respecting the elders. In my reflective journal, I wrote, my parents were very humble and God fearing. I saw them respecting everyone, irrespective of their social status, relationship, or age. Similarly, many of the women talked about how they learned to respect the elders through observing their parents. Sultana from Pakistan reminisces that she saw her father respecting women, beginning from her mother to her daughters. He set an example for her brothers to follow. Likewise, Naima, also from Pakistan, talked about how she saw her parents respecting the elders, never telling a lie, and backbiting. She saw her mother taking care of the sick in the family. She would go and see if she could help them in any ways and cook for them. She stated that both her parents were very compassionate towards the young. This taught her and her siblings the true essence of Islam, which teaches every Muslim to have a strong character. Another very important aspect which I remember and is also evident in the narratives of the Muslim women is that of community engagement. This is illustrated by Gamla from Palestine. She explains, I quote, in our community, we had the feeling of caring and everybody took care of each other. It was like a big family. My parents would always tell us not only to look at our needs, but also look around and see how you could help others and how to make a strong bond in the community. Unquote. Similarly, Rana from Saudi Arabia recalled that her mother would always emphasize the relationship development between families and communities. She remembers her mother would say that they had to take care of each other, your family and your community. She showed her love for all and would help people in the family. According to her mother, Islam is a communal religion. I also saw this growing up, and I conjectured that Islam emphasizes on strong kinship. Kanika from Africa remembers that her father had his own business and he made sure that they were all studying, praying, and fasting. He was still trying to understand Islam and ways to practice it. She describes, and I quote, he would take us to markets where we bought halal meat, and the uniforms that we wore were always modest. My father would go with teams to do abha in the neighborhood and work voluntarily with people who were in drugs to help them overcome their problems. This is all that we saw when growing up. Unquote. The Haima from Ghana also learned about Islam by following the practices of her parents. They were kind, God-fearing, and would respect everyone. Fadil from Cuba also illustrates the communal spirit displayed at her house. She was born as a Muslim and her household was religious. She remembers that they did not have any mosque to go to, but they had communal prayer in their home. On Fridays, they would invite close friends and relatives so that they could pray together. The women brought food and they would all eat together. Jannat from Cuba only remembers that she was never told of the religion, but she saw her parents practicing it. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation video. Thank you for joining and see you next week, that is February 4th, 2023. Until then, goodbye and Allah Hafiz.